So kind of have a rare occasion here in the shop where I have two different OS Geminis apart for rebuild. Figured I would do a comparison video showing a first generation Gemini 120 and a first generation Gemini 160. The 120 is from a deceased club member's estate. The 160 I bought crashed years ago and it runs my Super Cub. This is this engine's second time apart on my bench. I bought it crashed, it's broken. A little JB Well fixes it, but this engine runs really great. I had a bearing problem, which is why it's apart. And the 120 was just a part for cleaning and new bearings. So the 120 was OS's, I think, first twin, came out in 1979. It's worth considering when this engine came out, the kind of Surpass series, like this is a 91 FS, these engines hadn't come out yet, and they wouldn't come out for several more years. At the time that the 120 came out, you had stuff like the FS60 and the FS80, those rear cam open rocker engines from OS. And I don't have one of these in the shop to show you, but there's a lot of unique things about this first gen 120. The first gen didn't last that long. It was replaced in 85 with the Gemini 2. I understand they have problems. They're low on power. I think maybe the con rods like to break. But design-wise, they're pretty significantly different from the later of the Geminis and just the later FS series. You'll notice more parts on this side. I've already got the valves put back in the heads on the 160, whereas the valves are still apart and all the rockers and stuff are out. So that's why there's more parts over here. This one does have more parts, though, because of how the rockers go on, and I'll show you that here in a second. So first off, this is 79. This came out in 84. The 160 and the 240 came out at the same time. A year later, the new 120s came out. And the new 120s, I've never actually seen one, but from what I can tell, they're basically the 160, but with less bore. I think the design has they pretty much went to the 160, 240 design with the 120. So we'll start with the case. Because my case is broken, the intake manifold's already kind of glued on. The cases are similar. The OS logo is different. One's much older than the other. And then the 120 is raised in a little boss there. This one's raised and then it's been machined with a little texture for the 160. The later 120s look like this. General arrangement's kind of the same. The back is actually an exact match. You can tell there's a little difference in the casting quality. It's a little, just the surface finish is rougher on the older 120. Pretty much the same. The 160 case is a little bit longer. Actually, it's not longer there, but it is a little longer in the nose. Just a little bit. Inside's the same. They use the same bearings. I think really the only interchangeable parts on these two engines are the bearings. We'll start there. We got these. The cylinders are pretty much the same. You've got a little bit of a cutout there where one of the rods passes, or the rod housings pass. These are aluminum cylinders with, I think they're chrome sleeves. I actually forget what the sleeves are, but the sleeves come out, they heat shrink on. The pistons, I've never seen full skirt solid pistons like this, whereas the pistons on the 160 are a little closer to what you would see later. I don't know if these pistons are common to anything else. These pistons were later, and the sleeves were later used on the 91 series, same part number. The wrist pins are pretty much the same. The 160 uses the little Teflon bushings, whereas the 120 uses the little clips. These rods they look like they're cast, and they have the OS branding in them. They do have oil holes. There's no oil groove inside of there, whereas the rods on the 160, I believe, are machined, or maybe they're forged. They're obviously machined, but I think they're forged. they've got an oil groove and an oil hole on each side. That one has 2 oil holes in the bottom. Both 2-piece because they have to come apart. And they both use the same proprietary little screw that you can't really get, so you have to buy a whole new rod just to get the screw. This one had a broken screw, which is why I know about this. Crankshafts look pretty much the same. The flat surfaces on the 160 are machined, whereas these are just the raw casting. The gear diameter is the same on the gear for the cam. It's a little bit shorter, as you notice. Remember, the case was shorter, crankshaft is shorter. These look like they're the same. These really neat valve covers that kind of match the old Continental engines. This one says Gemini. This one says Gemini 160. And that one says maybe Orawa model, and that one says OS engines. These are not the same size, though. You can see the 160 is a bit larger. I believe the Gemini 2 120 uses the same size covers as this. The back plate, I'm just kind of going everywhere here. Looks like it's the same, but they're not. It's funny, they both say OS FT120 up here, but you can see the pattern where the little feet on the back of the engine mount is different. But this newer one has the cast dimples for this pattern. So I'm wondering if the newer 120 still kept the same. And you can see there's even a little bit different in the casting there. Something that's interesting to point out, and I've always kind of wondered about it, is the 160s have this little boss here, but it's not drilled. In the 120, this is drilled and filled with a screw usually, and it's just a little passage that goes to where the back of the crankshaft is. And I wonder if maybe that wasn't for oiling. I can't find a manual for the old school 120. While I have the back plates here, the 160 has its serial number on this little data plate here. The 120 does not. The 120 serial numbers live underneath in this little boss here on the bottom of the crankcase. And the boss is still there in the 160, but there's no serial number on it. We'll work down to the cams. The cams are the same size, basically. This one's, the 120 is a little bit shorter because the case is shorter. Same diameter, same pitch on the gears. Also, they both have the witness mark hole and the same kind of basic thing. This one's huge, this is much smaller. This has got a webbed gear, which is odd. This one does not. The real difference is the cam profile and size. The cams are much narrower. Let's see if you can see that. They have a much sharper profile and a little bit less lift. On the heads, the 160 has more or less the same. This is a 120 head, an FS 120 single. Pretty much the same thing. You've got this boss here, and your rocker arms fit on this shaft, and they go on, and pretty standard. On the 120, remember, I think this was the first enclosed rocker box or rocker arm cover engine from OS, because all the other 4-strokes up to this time had open rockers. You've got this little yoke that only fits in. It's nice they did this for you. It's got some fins here, and there's some little bosses there. It only fits one way, and that supports the shaft with the rocker arms. Let's see here. Put that on. That one's not quite ready to go. So you have a rocker arm, spacer. These may not be going on the right way, but I'm just doing this for the video. So that, man, backwards. is how those would go. So I've never seen this before on another OS engine, and I'm assuming it's unique to the 120. Inside the heads are very different. I don't have the valves in this one yet. I guess we can. It's the same valve on both sides. Just a weird shape. The way the head's dished out is different. Don't think they have head gaskets. Yeah, no gaskets. There's a gasket on this on the 160. Let's see where we can go next. The carburetors. It's an OS-F carburetor. This is a 2-needle carb on the 120. Oddly enough, the later 160 has this carb, which is an air bleed. There's the air bleed screw there. The 120 the Gemini 2 has this same carb. This carb works great. People poo-poo on air bleed carbs, but this thing has really worked well. The later 160s have this 2-needle carb with this weird low-speed mixture adjust. And something kind of unique to this carb is the way the fuel nipple can rotate if you loosen it. The 120 has this cool scale-looking prop hub thing that they didn't ever use again. All the Gemini series don't use normal prop nuts. They use these giant weird prop nuts that go up and around the shaft that require huge reamers to ream your props out for. This is what the 160 and the rest of the line looks like, and I think the 120 Gen 2s have the same thing. So you got the nut, you got this jam nut that goes up inside of it, does a good job. Whereas the 120, I think someone added these pins. I don't think these are stock. The 120's got a single nut with this cool scale washer that goes around just like that. It's dirty inside, I'll have to clean it up. So that's kind of unique. And there's no jam nut, so you just have this one nut. I'm wondering if it's kind of prone to kicking off the prop, which is why he added those pins. Intake manifold's a little bit different. On the 160, this normally comes apart, but it's glued on. You have these boots, and there's an O-ring inside of there to seal it. On the and this arrangement is common to the rest of the Gemini series, including the Gemini 2 of the 120. With the first gen 120, you do have an O-ring inside of this Y manifold, but the intake pipes screw on in the same way they do on the cylinder with this nut around here. I think that's about it for the major differences between the two engines. I haven't run the 120 yet. This 160 I've run a lot. I hear they're low on power. They like to bend rods. Something about the rods, actually, is the 120's push rods are much longer than the 160 and the rest of the series. Just the way the heads are laid out, even though these engines have the same stroke, you can see how much longer the barrel is on the 120 than the 160. And I guess the heads are going to be shallower. Yeah, the heads are a little bit shallower. I don't know if that extra length is why they like to bend push rods, but they're the same diameter. They were shortened in the later versions, and they got wider push rod tubes. These push rod tubes are very narrow. So I am not an OS historian, so most of this info is from what I got in reviews. I'll put the links to the reviews in the description. But just a quick look at, I guess quick, 15-minute look at the differences between the two first-gen Geminis. Like I said, the Generation 1 Gemini 120 lasted for 6 years and was replaced by the Gen 2 called the Gemini 2. The Gemini 2 is pretty much a 160, but a smaller bore. And then the 240 and the 300 are all very similar. There's a few differences in the two bigger engines, but they kind of follow this pattern. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks.